While a lot of conversation was centering around Alvin Kamara not being present for practice, not only was he present for the first day of training camp, but he made it well known yet again that he intends to retire as a New Orleans Saint. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network on SI, which you can now find at the new website, by the way, saintssi.com, if you want to go and check that out. I am so glad to be here with you today as we are covering the first day of New Orleans Saints training camp. Yes, it is finally in the books. It has happened. The New Orleans Saints return to the practice field. And of course, football is back. We're going to take a look at a few things. We're going to wrap up the show looking at Kendre Miller. Could his potential roster spot be in trouble going into this season with yet another injury having struck? And now Dennis Allen calling him out publicly. We're going to take a look at that. I'll give you an update on participation because it was up big time for training camp day one. But I want to kick everything off taking a look at Alvin Kamara, who made it known yet again that he intends to retire as a New Orleans Saint. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day and for being an everydayer here on the Locked On Saints podcast, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So today's episode brought to you by friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Alvin Kamara was going to make news one way or another. It was going to be about him showing up at training camp and participating. It was going to be about him not showing up at training camp, not participating. It was going to be about him participating or being present, but not participating, whatever. It was going to make news. But the way that Alvin Kamara made news today, I think, is the way that fans should want any of their favorite players to make news. Alvin Kamara is in the middle of a contract negotiation, contract conversations. Some people would even say contract dispute with the New Orleans Saints. There's absolutely no doubt about that. But the way that he is going about it is so incredibly unique and so incredibly different, being transparent, being open, being vocal, being honest, and most of all, being upfront with us after practice. I asked Alvin Kamara straight up because I'm tired of kind of speculating around what those contract negotiations, those contract conversations might really be about. Is it about the money that he's making now? Is it about the money that he wants to make? Is it about, his future years? Is it just about guarantees and commitment from the organization? And for him, it's all about the future. He told me and the rest of New Orleans media that was there, I want to be a Saint. I want to retire here. And this is not the first time, by the way, that Alvin Kamara has made such a statement, has expressed such a sentiment about wanting to be a lifer, right? When Cam Jordan signed his new extension before the end, or I believe it was before last season got started during training camp, Alvin Kamara told me then, yeah, I want to be a lifer. He said, hell yeah, I want to be a lifer. Like, he wanted to finish his career in New Orleans. And now here he is again making that statement as he has all of these discussions around his potential future with the team. And here's the other thing that I really loved about Alvin Kamara's conversation with us. Not only did he say that he wants to be a Saint, not only did he say that he wants it, but he didn't put it all on the team. He even made the argument against himself in terms of understanding that the NFL is a business and that teams are going to be looking at things in different ways for how they're going to handle those contract negotiations. He went down the road of his age. He went down the road of the lackluster production over the course of the past 2 years by his own standard, right? Him saying that does not live up to my standard as a football player, all those things. He made all of that and all of those comments on his own. He did that. And so he was blatant, he was honest, he was upfront about what this negotiation is, what he wants, what he hopes for, all that. The other thing that I really really appreciate that he said too was that if he's there, he's playing. Like Alvin Kamara in the middle of a contract negotiation could have been present at practice, but then not participated. He could have been standing off to the side. He could have taken the day off. Could have been over there with his teammates, kind of helping the coach and all those other things. Think back to Melvin Ingram during the Chargers season of Hard Knocks, where he was kind of mentoring the guys and stuff like that. It's a really easy way to, what's the phrase I want to use? It's not really about saving face, but it's more so about good faith, right? Operating in good faith. Like, hey, we're in the middle of a contract negotiation. I don't want to get hurt because that's going to stifle my contract negotiation, but I want to show you that I'm here. Alvin Kamara goes a step further and says, I'll risk it. And let me show you that I'm here. Let me show you what I have. Let me show you what I can do. That effectively says, here's why you need me. Here's why you want to commit to me in the future. And I think on top of everything else, on top of what it is that he desires, what it is that he's hoping for, what it is that he's fighting for, all these other things, I think that the other thing that he's really looking at is, hey, there's a new offensive system here in town that really, really, really wants to utilize a guy like Alvin Kamara, right? Like the wide zone system influence that Clint Kubiak, the Saints' newest offensive coordinator, is bringing in is one that emphasizes running backs, getting them on the outside, getting them into explosive opportunities, getting them out in space, utilizing them as receivers out of the backfield. So it goes twofold, right? As Alvin Kamara, you get to say, hey, I'm going to be used a lot more differently. You're going to be able to see that I still have a lot to give. He said, my bones don't hurt, my muscles don't hurt, I can still play, my legs still work, all those other things. But at the same time, he also can use that as leverage to say, hey, you're going to utilize me a lot more. And because of that, I want to make sure that I'm protected and that there's a commitment here. The other thing that I loved outside of all that, and I love the point that somebody just made as well, Rose City, about how he could have pulled a Brandon Ayuk, right? Brandon Ayuk, public displays of negotiation between him and the San Francisco 49ers, holding out of camp, effectively showing up in street clothes, like reporting, but being there. Like that's what he could have done. That's what Alvin Kamara could have done as well. He could have done like some of these other guys like Jordan Love holding out, although that holdout is a little bit different. I think the team wants him to hold out as well so that they don't risk the quarterback getting hurt before they get him under contract and all those other things. But like he could have done all those things. He didn't. He was at practice and he participated in everything. Everything. Hear me when I say it. Everything. Individual drills, walkthroughs. He went into routes on air. He was there for 7-on-7s. He was there for team drills. He did everything, right? Didn't take anything off. The other thing that I really enjoyed too, that he also mentioned, was that he drew comparisons to where the Saints are now versus where they have been in the past or previous in recent years when he was discussing the things that may have plagued their team. Lack of accountability, fumbles, and things like that happening in games that could be squashed in practice, but no one making a big deal about things. He was kind of pointing all that stuff out, being his typical honest self. And then when asked, do you feel those elements heading in the right direction now, he gave a very positive answer about that. And basically saying that, like, look, there was a lot of expletive deleted that was going on, and that leads to bad expletive deleted that you're not looking for. You want the good expletive deleted, and I think now we're getting closer to the good expletive deleted. So he likes where this team is going clearly enough to where he wants a commitment from the team that he will be able to be around for quite some time. So that's what I'm looking at when it comes to Alvin Kamara. I think it's I thought he was brilliant speaking to us today, and that was so much fun to take part in and to be a part of. I'm so glad that football is back. Coming up next, speaking of football being back, you got also some good participation for the New Orleans Saints throughout day one of New Orleans Saints training camp. So let me break it down for you, including what Chase Young didn't do, and why it is that he looks like an imposing force on the football field. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's live episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app because it's going to allow you to be able to get all those last-minute tickets that you're looking for. And in fact, over at Game Time, most of the time, tickets get even cheaper the closer that the beginning of the event gets. I love that because I am a very plan-in-the-moment person. I'm a spur-of-the-moment person. I love that about Game Time, that I can get affordable tickets for events wherever I am with one app, and do so without having to plan things out for months in advance. So maybe you want to check out a preseason game out of town. Maybe you want to check out the Saints preseason game against the Titans. I think tickets are like $3 on Game Time right now. The home opener for the preseason, followed by the home opener on the regular season for the Carolina Panthers. You can get that as well. All that over on Game Time, as well as comedy, theater, music, concerts, and so much more. So go and check them out today. Go and download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. The New Orleans Saints got pretty good participation from guys that maybe we didn't expect to see very much of as they kicked off training camp day one. As we take a look at all this, I want to jump in and highlight Chase Young. We didn't get to see a lot of Chase Young, but what we got to see of Chase Young made a lot of things make sense for the New Orleans Saints in terms of how he fits and why they probably pursued him. But we also saw other players also make their opportunities or get out there as well. So let's break all that down. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. We got a lot of good stuff. New stuff coming up for you here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Not the latest of which, but a big thing that we're building off of is Locked On Sports Today, the 24/7 stream. You want to get the latest news on everything going on around training camp across the entire NFL? Go and check it out from the local experts over at Locked On Sports Today's 24/7 stream. You can find it on the Locked On Sports Today YouTube page and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Chase Young is a big son of a gun. All right, Chase Young fits what this New Orleans Saints team is looking for. I was thinking about Chase Young, and I was, when the Saints signed him and all these other things, and then trying to compare him in my mind, stature and physique wise, to Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan, things like that. Nope, no, he different. He's just very different. Now, he didn't participate in a ton today, right? I'm not trying to overhype him. All I'm trying to say is I get it. I see what the physique has to offer and how it just fits so much the New Orleans Saints build. Big, broad, strong guy playing on the edge. That's what it is the New Orleans Saints love. He clearly checks that box and has some good speed to boot. So the thing that I want to highlight, though, is how much he participated. Chase Young being out there day one of training camp is well ahead of the timeline that we expected when we first heard about the neck procedure. Everything once the neck procedure was going to happen, the offseason neck procedure, that all pointed to he'll be ready to begin the season. Right? That was always going to be the thing. What's up, South Philly? That's going to be the thing, right? He is going to do everything he can to be ready to go at the beginning of the season. Well, instead, he did everything that he could to be ready to go at the beginning of training camp, and he was out there. He participated in walkthroughs, some individual drills. He was around kind of the special team stuff as well, just didn't participate once it got into the deep part of the individual drills, some of the full speed stuff, and didn't participate in team drills. But I'm curious to see how quickly things ramp up for him. I think back to Kool-Aid and McKinstry during the mandatory minicamps, right? He had that one day to where he was kind of out there off to the side. Then the very next day, he did a little bit of individual drills. Then the very next day, he did all of the individual drills with the cornerback. And so I'm curious about how quickly Chase Young ramps on up into getting into the full run of the individual drills, getting into maybe the 7-on-7s a little bit more, and then eventually getting into the team drills. The thing that was really interesting is that when we saw him during walkthroughs, when he lined up in walkthroughs, he took the place of Cam Jordan over on the left side, lining up opposite Peyton Turner for one snap, and I think it was Carl Granderson for another. And he was rushing towards the inside. So he was lined up at edge, but then he rushed towards the inside and actually ended up kind of matching up with Cesar Ruiz over on the right side of the offensive line, but he took an interior pursuit angle. So that's really interesting to me too, is if they're going to use him to help to attack in the interior, then that opens up a lot of what we had hoped to see when it came down to the usage of Chase Young, Carl Granderson, and Cam Jordan, which was, how do you get all three of them out on the field together? How do you utilize all three of them to the point to where they're your NASCAR package plus, right? Your NASCAR plus package, right? We're all doing subscription services and plus and max and all this other stuff these days. What's your NASCAR plus package? And do you get the opportunity to utilize him in a bunch of different ways? I'm so excited to see how he changes, impacts, and ideally improves this New Orleans Saints pass rush once he gets his legs under him, once he gets acclimated to the new system, comes back from the injury in full, and all these other pieces. I'm so excited to see what that's going to look like, because this is a New Orleans Saints team that for the first time since 2017 did not reach 40 sacks, not just in a season, but over the course of 16 games. And the Saints could use a little bit of a boost in that area. How do you impact the quarterback? How do you finish plays at the quarterback? All that. I'm curious to see exactly how it is that Chase Young ends up being able to contribute to that. And if the Saints want, they could probably go out and find more pass rushing help. Emmanuel Ogbah just signed with Miami after Shaq Barrett's surprise retirement. Justin Houston's still out there, who's kind of like mercenary for hire status at this point in his career. And there's a few others as well. But ideally, the Saints will be able to get this done with the guys that are in their building. And so guys like Peyton Turner, guys like Isaiah Foskey. Foskey had a couple of nice plays today, by the way. One in the run game, another one to where he really beat Trevor Penning, but then Trevor Penning held. And this was after a plus rep by Trevor Penning, by the way. I want to be really clear about that. And so we're already starting to see kind of the back and forth between the offensive line and defensive line. That's exactly what we want to see. All right, let me continue on here with the participation stuff. Kool-Aid McKinstry, New Orleans Saints cornerback, he was with the second team opposite Alante Taylor. So they started off in the first team with Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo as the starting corners. Then when they went to second team, then you got the opportunity to see Alante Taylor on the outside with Kool-Aid McKinstry over opposite him. These are all base sets and things like that, 3 linebacker sets, everything. Which, by the way, speaking of 3 linebacker sets, my favorite players to watch today that I thought stood out the most, Demario Davis, Willie Gay, the 2 linebackers on the interior. If the Saints continue to add playmaking to their second level, it takes their defense from consistently good back to great. And I think that is a big thing that New Orleans Saints are really looking forward to. Demario Davis with a pick 6 today, by the way. And on that play was the play where Trevor Penning had a really nice pass set, but unfortunately it was spoiled by an interception and a big return by Demario Davis. But hey, sometimes it bees like that. But Kool-Aid McKinstry was out there participating in team drills, got all that stuff in. So that was great to be able to see him and Alante Taylor working opposite one another. Another guy that we were wanted to see how his participation looked was Chris Olave. Remember, Chris Olave finished mandatory minicamps with a red non-contact jersey because of it. I believe it was a shoulder tweak, if I remember correctly, from the weight room, and then came into last week on the non-football injury list for a tweaked back, according to Dennis Allen. It's about it being a back injury. And that was in Dennis Allen's press conference on Tuesday, the day before training camp began. So one of the things that Dennis Allen also said in that very same press conference was that Chris Olave would participate and be back out there, but that he would be limited. I didn't see many limitations for him. Now, maybe he didn't take as many team snaps as he typically would, or as many snaps in team drills as he typically would. But like, they have a bunch of different wide receivers that they were rotating and all those other things. So that's actually kind of okay, right? Gives you an opportunity to get better looks at not Kool-Aid McKinstry. I was just talking about Kool-Aid McKinstry. Equanimity St. Brown and Cedric Wilson and Bub Means and the new addition of Kevin Austin. And then you have the Stanley Morgan Jr. made his debut today and stuff like that. So lots of good participation notes for the New Orleans Saints, all the way from Alvin Kamara fully participating despite his contract negotiations, to Chris Olave looking good and not being in a non-contact jersey anymore, to Stanley Morgan Jr. making his debut, to Willie Gay looking good. Like, there was just a lot of really good stuff that came from all that. So I was really, really excited about what we saw from the New Orleans Saints. Everyone was present, with the except the only player that I didn't put my eyes on was Nephi Sewell. Tano Passanio was there, but he looked like he was in street clothes. And then Juwan Johnson was present as well, also in street clothes. But that's just because they're dealing with injuries, right? Both those guys on the physically unable to perform list, as well as Nephi Sewell. We don't expect to see Nephi Sewell soon, but we saw him out at like OTAs, minicamp, stuff like that. So it wouldn't be super outlandish to see him over on the sideline and things like that. All right, before we continue on here, I want to get to Kendre Miller and Dennis Allen's direct challenge to the second-year running back. I want to remind everybody that's here watching live, drop your questions in the chat, and I will answer your questions, a few of your questions, in tomorrow morning's episode, because we're back to 2-a-days. So live in the evening, and then you'll get a fresh episode every morning as training camp is getting started. So make sure that you do that as well. So get your questions in. I'll grab them after, and then we'll take a look. All right. Coming up next, Kendre Miller leaving with an injury and a direct challenge from his head coach, Dennis Allen. Let's break it all down as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula that brings home championships, and it's the same formula that will keep your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything that you need to be able to level up your ride or die to peak performance. Whether you're looking for superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, eBay Motors has you covered. And even more than that as well, because they've got over 122 parts for your number one ride or die. So you're always going to be able to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. All the parts that you need at the prices that you want. It'll help you make your car an MVP and start bringing home some more of those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive today at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints head coach Dennis Allen straight up called out Kendre Miller. I don't want to say he called him out, right? It wasn't disrespectful. Call out feels disrespectful. It wasn't disrespectful. But he definitely let off a shot across the bow when it comes to Kendre Miller and his young, but unfortunately eventful injury history. Let's break it down, because it could mean a lot for what that New Orleans Saints running back room looks like in 2024 if he can't stay healthy. Appreciate you very much, as always, for being here. Don't forget, we're your team every day, right? So we're doing live shows in the evening, which will immediately go up as well on the podcast side. And then every morning when there's practice, you'll also get another episode answering some questions that were left in the chat, things like that. Feel free to reach out with your questions any way that you want. I'll try to get some of them in the show. I typically pick 3 big overarching questions and then focus the show on those, whereas these live shows a little bit more loose, a little bit more like, let me make sure you get the information that you need so you know what you need to know from New Orleans Saints training camp. So we'll get to all of that as a part of our promise here on the Locked On Podcast Network of your team every day. So Kendre Miller came into the NFL with an MCL injury, worked his way from that. It kept him from participating in, the draft process, didn't get to really participate in the combine, pro day, things like that, but got drafted by the Saints anyway. Showed up here in New Orleans, was still nursing that knee injury, and then had a slew of other injuries after that. He had his jaw lock up one point during a practice, which you can't hold that against anybody, like TMJ, like what are you going to do? But then also had a bunch of other injuries, things like that effectively kept him out for the majority of his rookie season. Then he came out with such promise over the course of the last couple of games, effectively getting the start for the New Orleans Saints in that final game against the Atlanta Falcons, where he rushed for over 70 yards, looked really good, and everyone kind of went, there it is. I see it. I get it. I understand. Remember, this is the guy that came into the NFL saying, I'm coming for Alvin Kamara's spot. Remember that? Well, one day of training camp, during individual drills, before even getting to team drills, he ends up having to leave the field. Just for note's sake, offensive tackle Justin Herron, number 77, who was acquired this offseason, formerly of the Las Vegas Raiders, also spent some time with the New England Patriots. He also left with what was called a knee injury, according to Dennis Allen. Early indications are that it's not too serious, but they're going to wait and see kind of what happens when they delve into it a little bit more. But the big thing that came about the Kendre Miller injury was that it was a hamstring injury. And Dennis Allen saying straight up, when I asked about it, that he's got to be a guy that has to figure out a way to stay healthy. And one of the other quotes that he said immediately following that is something to the effect of, it's hard to make the team, if you can't be out on the field, or if you're not healthy, or if you're dealing with injuries, all this other stuff. Not a question of it's hard to prove yourself. Not a question of it's hard to, earn more snaps. It was a question of it's hard to make the team. So that brings about the question, is there really a world in which the New Orleans Saints end up cutting bait on Kendre Miller if he continues to struggle to stay healthy? What a turnaround that would be from I'm coming to take Alvin Kamara's spot to just a year later, right? Like almost exactly a year later, the draft plus training camp. All of a sudden your head coach during press conferences is saying he's going to have a hard time making the team. Now, that could have just been some motivational stuff. We know how Dennis Allen is. He loves to drive competition. But that's another reason, honestly, the driving of competition part that kind of makes me like pique my ear, hey, hold up, I'm a little interested here. Because if the Saints are also driving competition while also kind of casting these challenges, I'll say, right, coach challenge to a player, that means you have to have other players on that roster that you feel like can drive that competition. Enter Jordan Mims. I think Jordan Mims is a very slept-on piece to the New Orleans Saints running back room. I'm not saying that Jordan Mims is going to jump up and all of a sudden kick, make it so that Kendre Miller can't get on the team, or make it tough for Alvin Kamara or whatever. But I will say this: Jordan Mims has really good vision. He knows how to play the role in this offense. He understands the wide zone scheme. He loves playing in the wide zone scheme, not just from the running and getting out in space part, but even the being motioned out and operating as a wide receiver, because he gets to be a true part of the progression. And that's one of the things that I love that many players have told me directly about this Clint Kubiak offense, is that you're a part of the progression. There's no, oh, you're not really in this read. Oh, you're not really in. No. If you're on that field, you are in the progression, and the ball could go your way. And Jordan Mims, that's one of the things that he loves about this system. So is there a chance that a guy like Jordan Mims ends up at least challenging and competing? If Kendre Miller doesn't have the opportunity, like if this hamstring injury ends up keeping him out for any amount of time, Jordan Mims is going to get a lot more attention. And sure, the Saints could go to the free agency market as well. Some folks are already talking about guys like oh goodness, Leonard Fournette. Just one of the most legendary Louisiana players ever, and I couldn't think of his name, but Leonard Fournette and other free agents and folks that are coming from the UFL, much like the new wide receiver that the Saints brought in. There's a lot of those opportunities out there, and I think that for the Saints, and I know a lot of people when they hear, I've had a couple people that said like, oh, well, how could Dennis Allen say that about Kendre Miller, but then not say that about Peyton Turner? That's easy. Peyton Turner's a first-round pick. Kendre Miller's a third-round pick. The expectations are different, right? The need and the want and the wherewithal to have patience with the player is different for a first-round pick than it is for a third-round pick. And also, remember, the Saints did not pick up Peyton Turner's fifth-year option, so they've already said, hey, buddy, here's your last chance. They've effectively already put that on Peyton Turner, and Peyton Turner, by the way, had some nice moments today. I do want to mention that. So it is very interesting to see, and I'm not going to drive a narrative that is anti-Kendre Miller. It's just you don't see that very often that a head coach will do that, and not just any head coach. You don't see that very often when Dennis Allen comes out and does that. And so it's a challenge, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Kendre Miller responds to that if he gets the chance. And that's where the issue really lies for Kendre Miller. If it's health related, if it's a hamstring injury, if it's a soft tissue thing that continues and goes on for longer and all these other things, that's where things can get really dicey for Kendre Miller, because it may no longer be in his control. And that's just kind of where things unfortunately get unfortunate. Not to use the same word twice there. All right. Get your questions in. Going to answer them in tomorrow morning's episode. A couple of other extra things that I do want to mention. Spencer Rattler took third team snaps again. He was 0 for 3 on the day. 2 passes were broken up. One of them was batted at the line of scrimmage. Don't read into those numbers, though. This was not a hyper-intensive team drill situation. It was the first day, acclimation period, all those other things. Dallin Holker, I know a lot of fans want to know about him. First team reps consistently all throughout at tight end. He's so fun to watch, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch too. Jake Haener took second team snaps. Derek Carr, of course, took first team snaps. We'll see if Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler end up rotating. My play of the day goes to Nathan Peterman. Yeah, you heard me. Play action. Right sideline, A.T. Perry coming back. Big completion, deepest completion, biggest completion of the day down the sideline. On the offensive side, that's my play of the day. Defensive side, my play of the day. Derek Carr throws an interception over the middle, trying to target, feel out the timing. Again, don't read into interceptions and incomplete passes and all these other things right now. It's too early. But throws an interception to Demario Davis, who's prowling over the middle. Demario Davis houses it for a pick six. So again, Demario Davis really gave the standouts. Blake Grupe kicked 8 different kicks today, went 8 of 8. They were basically from extra point to 34 yards. Not super long kicks at all, but good stuff there. So there you go. Gave you a bunch of updates for today. Get your questions in. I'll answer more questions in tomorrow's episode. But above all, I appreciate the bunch of you that were here for today's episode live and the bunch of you that are checking out the show. Welcome to all the first-time listeners, all that. Don't forget we are here for you every single day that the New Orleans Saints practice, twice a day, and on days when they don't practice, once a day. A show every single day, unless I decide one day to get a little bit of an opportunity to take a rest, but I love this too much, so I doubt I'll take that. Appreciate you very much, as always, for checking us out. Go and check out Locked On NFL. Go and check out the other teams around the NFL. Locked On Pelicans, Jake Madison. Locked On LSU with Matt Moscona. So much around the world of sports right now, and we are back, baby, and I love it. We appreciate you very much, as always. Making Locked On Saints a part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi, and if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.